Mhm. See if this picks up. All right. It's just been like fucking 9 or 10 years. I think that song's about 9 or 10 years old, and that shit still slaps. I don't know if it picked up on the situation, but let me see here. Hold on one second. All right. Yeah, that was I don't know if it picked up. I'll check it out, but it was the song by Spag Hetty, and it's called "Give Me a Break," and that shit is fucking awesome. But here we are. We're back. We're going to be talking a little bit about the bad boy, good guy matrix, and just about how there's like a lot of misunderstanding about it, because for the most part, people think that it's just this black and white sort of thing where there's just like bad boys and nice guys, and that's really not the case. That's really not the case when it comes to that sort of thing. Let me just check my mic, make sure everything's going all right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're good here. We're good. All right. Gonna be getting ready to go to Vegas uh, in a little bit. Going out to Vegas to from the 1st to the 4th to be hanging out with some colleagues, Real Game No Theory crew, Steve, Mr. 1950, Miles, Lucario, Kay Zagan, and there's going to be a bunch of other people there too. So it's going to be a good time. I'm not presenting at the event, but I'll be there to participate and give support, answer questions, and things of that nature. So yeah, it should be a real good time. So bad boy, nice guy sort of thing. So I think we all know the common trope for uh you know the bad boy thing, like, oh well, girls like the bad boy, and they don't like the nice guy until, say, like later in life. Like they'll blame the women. They'll say, oh my gosh, you've been passing up the nice guys for the bad boys, in your 20s, and then when you've become older and wiser and a little bit sort of feeling bad about your decisions in your youth, that you're going to come back and try to find a nice guy to marry. And then they'll say, well, we're all the nice guys, and then the dudes will say, well, they're in your DMs and they've been there for the past 15 years. And it's not so cut and dry in that way. um it's not so black and white, you see, because it's a sliding scale. Okay, so you can have a nice guy, right, who's got some bad boy tendencies, or you can have a bad boy who's got nice guy tendencies. And the thing is that you can you can like range it, right? There's like a range of this like matrix, I guess if you want to call it that, between like nice guy behaviors and bad boy behaviors. And the thing is extremes. Okay, so extremes will be where it's most unappealing. Okay, if you're going to spend any sort of time, because honestly, like, you really shouldn't be spending any kind of time thinking about this nonsense. Like, if you think of yourself like, oh boy, am I a nice guy, am I a bad boy, like, that's really sort of thinking that you should not have as a man. Like, you should just be more absorbed in just what you want to do and how you're going to do it. Like, that's really all you should be thinking about, not whether women perceive you as one thing or another. So the the sliding scale, it's the extremes, like I mentioned, that are the least favorable, right? So if you could imagine the worst of bad boys, right? They're just super, super cold. Okay. This might be super arousing to a woman, and she might be really gravitated towards this person to at least have sex with, but she's not going to take this guy and try to present him to the public, okay, as like, oh, this is my guy, right? She's not going to be interested in introducing him to her parents, for example. Like, that's not going to happen either, right? Because that he's going to be too extreme. Like, her dad might be like, who the fuck is this guy? Why are you seeing such a troublemaker, or such a guy who's so rough around the edges? Didn't I teach you any better, or something along those lines? um and same with the other side of it, the other extreme, of being super, super nice. On that end, it's so unappealing that she doesn't want to be seen in public with that guy either. He's not going to be shown off to friends. He's not going to be taking pictures with, and things of that nature. So really, if you do think about it, just I guess make sure that you're not in either of those extremes. I guess if you're really, on the extreme of bad guys, you just really don't give a shit about anything. And and this is a very small portion of the population. Like, most guys are not in this range. Most guys are actually in the middle, right? Where they've got some assertive, sort of selfish mindsets and behaviors, and then they also have some sort of considerate mindsets and behaviors. And it's having a somewhat of a balance between those things. All right, now I would say that there are probably more uh guys with nice guy tendencies out there than there are, say, bad boys with bad guy tendencies. So if you have the feeling, and you like, I think most guys know where they stand, okay? And usually, if you were to kind of take a glance around, you'd know if you are attracting women. You know, when you are interacting with women, how they behave around you, right? So, like bad boys, or guys with bad boy tendencies, they never hear, "You're so sweet. You're such a great guy. You're gonna make some woman very happy one day." Like, that's never gonna happen to a guy who's got bad boy tendencies. Um, so so if you're hearing that sort of stuff, if you ever heard that sort of stuff, you probably have a fair bit of nice guy tendencies. And this is definitely gonna set you back. All right. So if you have this, it's not the end of the world. Okay. It's really not the end of the world. Like, basically, that just means that you have to work on being a little bit more selfish, and that's all. That's all that means, is basically you just have to become a little less conscientious and a little bit more selfish, and that's it. That's really all you got to do. Now, it's obviously easier said than done. Okay, it's easier said than done to say, hey, you just got to be a little bit more selfish, because you've spent a large part of your life, it could be decades or so on, that where you've been conditioned to consider how other people take your presence, how other people take your behavior, and so on. So it does take a bit of work to get your mind out of thinking about what other people are thinking. And this is actually one of the larger speed bumps that many of my clients go through, where that's a major part of their thinking. And it's very hard to get past. But once you do, then all the other stuff kind of really like rolls into place. It's very easy after that. But that major speed bump of having your mind in the heads of other people, that's a habit that's built up for a long period, and you got to break out of it. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to break out of it because that's what coaching is for, but it's integral to growth that you get past that feature. And this is what nice guys do. Okay. Now, why would nice guys do this? Why would nice guys think about what other people are thinking? Or why would they think about what women are thinking? And it's because nice guys have a very strong, deep seated fear about rocking the boat. They do not want to rock the boat. They don't want to create waves. They want to remain in positions of being acceptable, right? And many times nice guys will develop perfectionism, and they don't want to make any mistakes. They want to come across as somewhat perfect so that they can avoid any sort of situation that will prevent them from uh it'll prevent them from being seen as faulty and therefore rejectable. Okay, so does that make sense? God, I got like fucking mustache hair going up my nose. But anyway, so the nice guy, he spends a lot of time avoiding conflict. He spends a lot of time making sure that the people around him are satisfied and not 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 like picking him apart or really paying attention to anything that he's really doing. Okay, like he would like to blend in and uh and not be noticed too much. Like he wants to be noticed just enough so that he's recognized, but he doesn't want to be noticed so much that his behaviors are being analyzed. Because when you start doing that, that's when he gets taken apart. That's when his behaviors can be pieced out, and then he can be figured out and realize that, oh, he's just a nice guy. He's trying to do these things to get a certain outcome. And and usually you guys will have a secret agenda. And sometimes that's aware to the nice guy, and sometimes it's unaware. Sometimes it's running like a background app where he has this unconscious agenda. Robert Glover calls it covert contracts. So it that looks like, if I do this, then I should get this, right? If I take her out, then I should get a kiss. If I take her out, I should get sex. If I'm nice to her, she should be nice to me. And this is all really faulty thinking, okay? Because, well, there's layers to it. There's actually a lot of layers to it why it's faulty thinking. But one of them is that he's not centered on what he actually wants and isn't bold enough to speak on it or act on it. Okay, so he has these underlying desires, and then what's layered on top of it is stuff that he believes to be socially acceptable in the arena of dating and interacting with women. And a lot of this stuff is faulty, right? A lot of it is are falsehoods that are not really real. They're conditioned sort of things that are fed to him so that he will, sort of play a certain role. And he takes up that role very, very well. Okay. And that's sort of what makes the bad boy so appealing to women or guys who have some varying degrees of bad boy behavior. And that is that he's not following something. Like he appears to be following his own path. He appears to be following his own desires. And his problem, okay, and to many bad boys it's really not a problem because often they just don't give a shit. But the problem that they have but they don't realize is that they will never receive depth. They'll never experience a deep dive into a woman. Okay. So I've asked this before to guys, and I'll say, would you rather have 300 lays, just like one night stands with different women, or would you rather have three women who revere you like a god? And you got to really think about that. Okay. Because it's not really about having as many lays as possible. Okay. Like some guys say, oh man, I've got more bodies than you. And that's fine. Okay. If that's all that he's after, okay. But where are those women? They're all gone. Right? It's like a revolving door. They come in and they leave. They come in and then leave. Right. And either they leave or he's dismissing them. And if that's just all he wants, that's fine. All right. But I'd much rather have a woman or women who revere me like a god, who are coming at me with reverence, coming at me with deep respect, coming at me with wanting to earn my attention, wanting to earn my dick, wanting to earn everything that I am that I can offer them because I've been able to move myself through them such that they can experience a different level of themselves. And your, say, prototypical bad boy isn't doing this. He's just skipping across the surface of the lake like a stone being thrown at it. Okay. And this is so it's like this is a problem for the guy with bad boy tendencies, but he's not even aware of the problem. Okay, because he's like, hey, if I can get these women again and again, then I'm doing great. I've got success, and this is what he's very happy about. This is what gives him pleasure. And this guy hasn't hasn't really experienced the pleasure involved in leading. He hasn't experienced the pleasure involved in having influence over a woman. And it's just something that it's a little bit hard to explain. It's something difficult to put into words of what that experience is like. But in my opinion, it far surpasses just having a bunch of one night stands. Like having a woman waking up every day thinking about you first. Like she's thinking about you before you think about you. And you're the last thing she thinks about before going to sleep. And she thinks about you all throughout the day. And not just thinking about you in wistful, dreamy, lovey sort of thinking. I'm sure that's there, but more so how she can behave in such a way that she can get even more of your attention, your respect, your love, your physical affection. All right. This is far, far different than what the bad boy is getting. And he doesn't even know that it's even there as an option because he thinks women start and stop with their pussy. And that's not at all the case. That's absolutely not how women actually are. They're much, much deeper than what is presented, right? So the bad boy is actually operating in the same place as the nice guy, right? It's just the other side of the same coin. He still is only seeing, hearing, and interacting with women on a very surface level. Okay. And they even talk about it on a very surface level, right? They talk about his body, they talk about his swag, they talk about his, his hobbies or how he moves. And it's all very, very surface. Okay. And the women, they will get emotionally wrapped up into this. Okay. Because it does have a roller coaster effect, right? Where they'll have some sort of great intimate experience with him, but then he doesn't communicate with her at all until the next time he just want access to her body. And this puts her on this like roller coaster effect. Okay. But as that compares to when you're leading a woman, and it's more like you're having deep influence over her behavior, you're having influence over how she thinks and how she perceives reality, how she perceives herself. That kind of roller coaster is actually bringing her closer and deeper to herself. And that's something that when she comes across a man like this, that's when things really start shifting for her. Okay. So as it applies, say, like to the bad boy, nice guy matrix, the man who has that I guess that effect, if that's what you want to call it, the man who has that kind of effect, he is gonna likely be more in the bad boy range, but not completely on that far end. Okay. He's not gonna be in the middle where it's like balanced, and be a little bit more, because in order to be this way, and in order to have that kind of influence over a woman and be able to speak to her center and speak to her essence and have her move through that, it requires you to be a little bit selfish. Okay, but not selfish in a cruel sort of way, or in a way that is completely void of being conscientious. There is still a certain amount of conscientiousness involved here. It's just not so much that it puts you at the halfway point or into the range of nice guy behavior. Okay, it's there, but it comes with conditions. Okay, so I mean, like shit, like my girl is still waiting for her first date. Like, I never took her out on a proper date before. And so, I mean, we still go out, but it's not like a date. And we never had that. I never presented a date to her when we first started seeing each other. And because I was in the mindset of this sort of stuff needs to be earned. Okay. So I would say just the leader type, a man, not a bad boy or a nice guy, a man, he has the capacity. He has great capacity for care, great capacity for conscientiousness and consideration. But it's up to how you strategize and how you have your program that leads her and positions her such that she can prove and earn those nice guy behaviors that you have. All right. So it's like reserving the boyfriend energy, so to speak, to quote Mr. Lucario, shout out to him, to reserve the boyfriend energy for when you have positioned her to earn that. And you have to be able to create situations such that she can earn these things. All right. And you can even straight up tell her, your program can be anything you want, and you can present it however you want, as long as it's honest. That's what I would recommend. Make sure that your program is completely honest and truthful. Okay. Because then when you're presenting it, there's no lies involved, right? You're not there, you're not trying to impress her, you're not trying to uh you know like you're not trying to manipulate her or anything like that. You present it honestly, and you can say, listen, if you want this, I expect this. And that's perfectly fine. Right. And if she's really into you, it won't be a problem. Okay. So the thing is, like, when you're this direct, when you're very clear on your program and your standards and your values and why you want to move this way, Again, to sort that sort of stuff out, to sort out your constitution, that's reserved for coaching. So I'm not going to explain how to formulate your constitution. But once you're clear on it, it really simplifies the compatibility issues that a lot of people have out there. A lot of people have compatibility issues, because often they're moving by instinct. They're moving by the seat of their pants. They're moving by impulses, right? Which are usually tied to their emotions, and or just like this the primal instinct to have sex. And this really isn't a great way to move. It's fine to recognize these things, right? It's fine to say like, oh wow, I really like this girl, or wow, I really like to fuck this girl. um or I think she's really nice, or wow, look at her great qualities. That's totally fine to recognize these things, but it's really important not to ever move off of them. Okay. They're just mental notes that it's something you take note of and say, okay, I recognize she's sexy. I recognize she's attentive. I recognize that she's got good manners, or any sort of traits that she might have. Okay. Perfectly fine to recognize these things, but you don't go out of your way to then start treating her off your program, treating her in with utilizing boyfriend energy, boyfriend activities, boyfriend words based off of those things that you see or hear. All right, that's not the way. This will set a precedent that will lead the relationship off into the wrong direction completely. So it's really important that you know what your constitution is, and know what your program is, and then be able to relay at least the basics of what you want to do as you're interacting with the woman. And this allows her just to have the clarity to say, okay, I want to fuck with this guy or I don't. And sure, it's not as romantic as we've been conditioned to believe, right? It's not like The Notebook. It's not like Disney movies. It's not like any rom-com or anything like that. Okay? It's very to the point. Now, as it contrasts with our cultural influences, it actually does create a very strong emotional reaction in her. All right? Because think about it. Women are they're only knowledgeable based on the set of men that they've experienced. Okay. So the largest set that they have experience with is average nice guys. Okay, because there's more of them. There's way more nice guys in the world than there are bad boys. Now, sprinkled in there, depending on how old she is and how many, what her frequency with dating and having sex is, sprinkled in there will be a couple of bad boys, right? That have either stricken her fancy or she's actually gotten involved with. All right. But either way, what I'm describing from the man's perspective is that will this will pierce through that. And when you're that direct, it does have an emotional reaction, and it acts in a superior contrast to everything that she's experienced before. Okay. Because as exciting as a bad boy is, he too can be just dropped into a box. And if they have enough experience with them, and like as they get older and older, they're like, I can see that guy from a mile away. I don't even want to get involved. After he says a couple of things or she watches how he moves, she's like, nope, I don't want to bother. I've been there, I've done that. And then that's kind of like around the time period when nicer guys start looking better, even though they don't produce that erotic spark. Okay. But the nice guys too, because they're in greater number, they're easily put in boxes as well. Now, when you come through with something that is well thought out, right? You know this information, you live by it, and you're now presenting this to her, not in in totality, obviously. Okay. But you're able to convey what it is you're looking for. And you're not there to try to win her favor, but it's presented more of an invitation or a presentation of this is what a little bit of what my world is like. And if she wants to get on board, great. Now, that is not typical. That is not what most women get to experience. They experience mostly nice guys with a few bad boys sprinkled in there. The bad boys and the nice guys, they're all plunked into boxes easily. Especially like I'd say by the time a woman is 35, she's experienced it all, at least in average terms. Very rarely has she experienced a man. Very rarely. Because those guys leave a mark emotionally that is vastly different than other guys. Vastly different. Okay. So just checking some shit here. All right. I'm good on time. So you know, like I said before, I don't think that it's actually helpful for a guy to be considering, "Oh, where am I on this matrix?" Right? Um, I think it's better to simply just become more selfish, right? Because, typically I'm not going to have, uh, you know, guys who are considered bad boys or consider themselves bad boys watching my shit, right? It's going to be nice guys who are socially awkward or they lack, that assertiveness to get out and express themselves. Okay. And because nice guys are in just a greater majority. And and they need that. They need to learn how to bring that out of themselves. And it's that projection. It's that projection of trying to think what others are thinking in the hopes that perhaps you can be like one step ahead of them. All right. Like I've got a guy who's like that now. He's got it pretty bad. He has this ability that he's developed over time to try to figure out what other people are doing before they do it. And his woman, he tries to do that to her. He tries to figure out what it is that she is thinking so that he can do something to sort of meet that need in the hopes that he can secretly get what he wants and avoid rejection, avoid his own woman not liking him. Now it's like, well, how is it that you are worried about your own woman not liking you? Like she's your woman, right? So this is something that really has nothing to do with her. It has a lot to do with himself, right? So when you're afraid of being rejected, you're actually already rejecting yourself. You're already saying, I'm not good enough. I don't like me. And therefore, I'm going to ask or create situations or try to figure out what the other person is thinking because I need them to feel better about myself. Hey, Big J. Thank you. You're a 19-year-old male. You've been watching me, Steve, and Mr. Lucario to learn about having game. Oh, that's cool. I appreciate that, Big J. You're a young man. So I wouldn't put too much stress on yourself. I would not put too much stress on yourself. Really, I would say, like I've been saying before, become more self-absorbed, but not in sort of a way that hurts others, but just understand other people are not going to like it, and that's okay. Like there's no rules out there that state you have to cater to other people's feelings. Okay. As long as you're not doing things that are purposely trying to cause harm and you're just being selfish and they're needy for your your attention, or needy for your compliments, or whatever it is that they're needy for, you know, that's their problem. That's them shifting things and trying to turn you into the bad guy by not appealing to their needs. Um, and like at your age, I'd say just learn to be selfish, learn to be self-absorbed, learn to love yourself without needing anyone or anything to validate what it is you are. And know that all of that comes internally. It comes from self, because that's all there is. That's what you wake up with, that's what you go to sleep with, that's what you're born with, that's what you die with. That's it, just you. So it's like you better create a good relationship with yourself, a really good relationship with yourself, because once that is developed and your house, like your internal house, your house is settled, then it doesn't matter what happens outside of you. Nothing matters that happens outside of you. Nothing is a real problem, right? There might be situations that need to be figured out, but there's no real problems. Okay. Women become a non-problem. Like for men, women are a non-issue. And that comes from having a strong constitution, having that strong house, because it's like you can have the invitation to come in. If they abide by it, they're treated well. If they don't abide by it, they're either punished or they're dismissed. It's really, really simple. So you never have any sort of lasting situations that are unfavorable with women when you are a man. You really don't. You'll have like just seconds, but that's all you need to either deal with it so it never happens again, or you deal with it in such a way that they are dismissed from your life. Like, it's super easy. All you have to do is just stop giving a shit what people think. Because honestly, they don't, like, no one really, like, you think people care about you. You think people have these lasting opinions about you, but truly, moments later or hours later or the next day or whatever, they have completely forgotten about you. They don't care. Like, what you think they care about, they don't. It's all in your head. It's all in your head. It's this fake dialogue about a fake reality that you've attached emotions to. It's not real. None of it is real. I mean, the shit that's in your head, right? You've made it up completely. So once you start challenging that stuff, okay, and start challenging with questions like, is what I'm thinking really real? Or have I just made it real to myself? Once you start questioning these things, that's when that reality starts falling apart, and it starts falling apart. And then you can start just seeing things as they are, not what you believe them to be, not what you perceive them to be. Okay. Because I've mentioned a number of times. Oh wow. Geez. Ganeste, or I am sorry for mispronouncing your name. What's up, dude? Who do you prefer, the white man with the beard, or do you prefer Andrew Tate or Joe Biden? I have I have no idea. But no, I don't prefer like any of those people. The white man with a beard, that sounds like Santa Claus. I'll prefer Santa Claus over Andrew Tate or Joe Biden. Um, yeah. But you're free to leave if you need to. Thanks for stopping through. Hey, that guy's great. Popped in like crazy asking about these three people, and yes. Okay, cool. I appreciate that. I'll be a millionaire in 3 years. I love that idea. Cool, man. Thanks for stopping through. Um, but yeah, once you conquer the inner dialogue, that's when that's when you can start shifting your reality to make it how now it sounds crazy. Like it sounds crazy. It sounds very like crystal rubby. It sounds very like manifest whatever. It's just controlling your thoughts. That's really all it is. Right? Because like the breakdown is just really simple. I mean, like think about it. If you let's just take a person who routinely bashes the shit out of themselves. Okay. Let's just make it very extreme. Now, we're not talking suicidal, but let's just make it that every day they're self doubting heavily. Let's just say they talk shit about themselves. They're constantly putting themselves down, right? I'm too this, I'm too that. I don't have this, I don't have that. I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too stupid, I'm too poor, I don't have this, I don't have that. I wish. My life sucks. Just like a whole mess load of poor me. Okay. This is what this person does, this guy does on a daily basis, more often than not throughout the day. Okay. All right. So this is what we're imagining here. This character. Now, how do you think their behavior is going to be? Right? The choices that they make, right? Because you can't make a choice without prior thoughts, right? So they're going to make choices that are influenced by this thinking. Their behaviors are going to be influenced by this thinking. This thinking will also change what they perceive. So they'll start perceiving their world around them, the people around them, their friends, their family, women, work, all sorts of stuff. They'll start perceiving these things in a skewed manner based on how they're making themselves feel based on that running tape that's in their head about how they believe themselves to be. And that's going to extend throughout the various things in their lives. So that's going to become the reality. Like they're not going to have any sort of successes. They're not going to have a happy life. Like you can't sit there and bash the shit out of yourself and fill your head with a bunch of wishful thinking and then follow that wishful thinking up with, that'll never happen. I could never do that. You can't have that and then have also successes. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you can't have a negative loop that's destructive internally and have a successful life. It doesn't work that way. I hope that makes sense. They're counteractive. So if you have these thoughts, excuse me, the first thing is to recognize the thoughts. Okay, this is like meditation 101. Okay, so in meditation, just simple breath meditation is you're sitting there, you've got your eyes closed, and you put your attention on your breath. Okay, and then the Buddhists have this thing they call the monkey mind, and your mind will just start running, right? Things will come up. You'll start thinking about what you have to do. You'll think about the laundry, the dishes, what you got to do at work the next day, or some memory that happened a while ago that bothered you, or, oh shit, I got to call my mom later. Like all this stuff, okay, will start coming into your mind. When that happens, you are to recognize that happening and go, oh, my mind is running off. Let me bring my awareness back to my breathing. And then you focus on your breathing. And then eventually the monkey mind will happen again. And then you just do this cycle over and over and over while you're meditating. And eventually the spaces in between the periods of monkey mind will get further and further apart, meaning you'll be spending more mental time focused on your breathing. And there'll be less frequency of the monkey mind popping up. Okay. And this is just an example of meditation about how to control your mind. But so it starts with that recognition, recognizing that, recognizing that the thing is happening. So you first have to recognize, oh, I'm giving myself useless or destructive thoughts. I'm consuming my own thoughts, this regurgitation of things that don't serve me, that don't help me in any kind of way. And they actually do the opposite. They're pulling me back. Okay, because your minds will fight against you. It's kind of fucked up. Like if you're a religious person, God has some really interesting ideas about how our brains work. Okay, but like he created a brain that fights against itself. Okay, I guess they call that free will. Nonetheless, it's there, and it does work against your best wishes a lot of the time. So what you have to do is when these thoughts come up, right? And this is the solution to creating the things that you want in life. Okay. It starts with just recognizing the thoughts and just seeing, just watching them go by like a movie reel. Like, go, oh, hey, I recognize that. Okay. Then once you start getting used to recognizing it, then you can start cutting them. Okay. I've mentioned before using a hatchet on yourself. Okay. Remember, I've talked about the hatchet, the axe, and the compass. All right. You use the hatchet and the compass on yourself. And once you get used to that, it becomes so easy to implement it with, say, a woman in your life. So easy because you've been doing it yourself. You understand the mechanisms involved. And that's how you can learn to guide because it starts with guiding yourself. It starts with guiding your own mind, start guiding your perceptions and start guiding your behavior, right? And once you get a feel for that mechanism, because you can create whatever you want. So once you start creating what you want to believe, what you want to perceive, and how you want to behave, how you want to think, how you want to talk, how you want to show up as a man, and you have reasoning behind it, then it becomes second nature to do this with a woman. It becomes absolute second nature because you've done it over and over and over inside your own mental gym, inside you. And it's that constant catching it, catching it, catching it. Chop that shit off with the fucking hatchet and then present your own compass of saying, no, I don't want to think that I'm too short. I don't give a fuck because that thought doesn't serve me. I am perfectly fine just the way I am. There's nothing wrong with my height or whatever sort of thing that goes in your mind. I just know a lot of guys are bothered by their height. And truth be told, women don't really give a shit about it. They really don't. And guys will say, well, yeah, they do. They always say this stuff. You look at their dating profiles, they mention, they're looking for a guy 6 foot and over, and listen to them on podcasts, and they say this all the time. You're crazy, Justin. They say this all the time. Trust me, they don't give a shit. Okay. And this is why. In their mind, the thought of a tall guy produces a feeling. So what they're actually after, they're not actually after the tall guy. They're after the feeling that comes with the fantasy of a tall guy. Right? It's just a feeling that they're after. And if you got some good game, you got a great program, you got a great mouthpiece, you know how to present yourself. And I'm not talking just your clothes or your swag or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just how you show up in you. That's presenting yourself. If that's all good, then that feeling, the feeling that is actually linked to a whole bunch of other feelings gets kind of like bubbled up inside her. That feeling gets created inside her and starts percolating based off of you. It and this the thought of I need a 6 foot guy or 6'4" guy or whatever, that basically gets thrown out the window because the feeling that she was after is being supplied. Right. Whereas in her head, she thinks that the feeling will come from, this tall dude or this rich guy or this model or whatever. Okay. So you really just, on top of these things, you really got to stop listening to what the fuck women are talking about. You really should. Like I mentioned before, the only woman whose voice actually matters off the point of neutrality, okay? Because in my world, all women are neutral, okay? The only woman who's not neutral is the woman who's campaigning to be on my program, who's campaigning to be with me, who's campaigning to follow me. That's the only woman that matters. That's the only woman's voice that matters. That's the only woman whose thoughts that matter, whose behaviors that matter, whose values that matter. That's the only one. All these other women out here in the world, they're completely neutral, null, almost not existing, sort of like NPCs. That's basically what I regard like all women. They're just NPCs until one of them kind of steps through and becomes real to me. Sort of like what was that movie? It was really good. Where the guy, there was that guy who he's like a video game character who becomes conscious of his own existence and he starts acting on his free will instead of based on his programming. Well, and he's sort of like stepping out of his reality and into a new reality of self-awareness. It's kind of like that, like where she steps out of that that null position, okay, that neutral position, and starts presenting herself to me. All right. And that's what my woman did. I gave her the opportunities to do so, and she took it up. And that's when they become something of value. Other than that, they're all valueless. Now, I'm not saying it's below value, like they're dirt, right? I'm not saying women are dirt. I'm saying that they don't come up above the horizon, okay? Or like the surface of the water. They all stay there, okay? To come up above the surface of the water, that's when you present the opportunities in order to vie to be on your program, and they rise up above the surface of the water. If they are um just completely like misbehaving, or they're being fucking ratchet, or they're being disrespectful, that's when they go below the surface and they become less than neutral, less valuable, to the point where I don't even regard their existence at all. Okay. Because NPCs, you still regard their existence. They're just not spectral. Right. So that's just kind of how I, right. But that all starts with just your own thinking. Right. It doesn't have anything to do with being influenced by women. Right. So it really starts with, again, right. I'll just run it through real quick. Recognizing your thought patterns, just paying attention to how you speak to yourself and the things your unconscious mind hears. Okay. And then getting into the habit of, after recognizing it, cutting it out, and then getting into the habit of, after cutting it out, presenting new thoughts. And it will feel awkward. It'll feel weird at first. Okay. Because we've normalized talking shit. We've not normalized talking positively to ourselves. People who talk positively to themselves are seemed more crazy than those that talk negatively towards themselves. And that's fucking crazy. Right? You should be appreciative of who you are, even if you've accomplished very little in your life. The fact that you're fucking here, like the chances of you actually existing are really, really fucking slim. So the fact that you're here at all means a great deal, just on like a biological level. Now think about your ancestors. Okay. You're here because your ancestors were either very clever or were fucking badasses. That's that's how you became here. They were either warriors or they were really smart and they were able to figure shit out. Or like, I see that bullshit over there and I'm gonna go around it. Right. Or I'm gonna hide, or I'm gonna, like, use some strategy. Or it was straight warrior and they fought their way through to survival to pass on those genes. So you're here standing on shoulders of people who fought to be here. And I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your culture is. It's all the same in that regard. In the regard that your ancestors are meaningful to you because they brought you here. So understands that the fact that you're here is amazing in itself. And you should take pride in that. Look in the mirror and appreciate what you see. You're stuck with it for the rest of your life. Now, of course, you can make some improvements if you feel that you need to. Go for it, right? Your cardio sucks, take up running. You get winded from walking a set of stairs, well, take more stairs. Don't take the escalator, don't take elevators. Walk to work, run to work, buy a bicycle. Okay? I'm not saying that you should think that you are perfection, but I'm saying that you should honor and appreciate yourself. When you honor and appreciate, that's when you can bring in things for improvement, right? Don't gaslight yourself into thinking that you're perfect just the way you are. Okay. But any improvements should never be based on, now I feel like I shouldn't even have to say this, but should never be based on trying to gain favor with someone else. Okay. It's gaining favor of your program, gaining favor of your constitution. So, like, for example, um, Christians, they have their 10 commandments. Okay. And there's actually a shit ton more commandments that the Christians have besides 10, but that's a whole other topic. But just so you know, so they got their commandments, and that's kind of what holds them to a certain set of behaviors. Now, of course, not all Christians are perfect. They fuck up on those 10 commandments sometimes, right? And so they'll try to improve themselves, but not based on, Bob down the street, right? Or Joan down the block, right? They don't matter. Their perception doesn't matter. What really matters is knowing those 10 commandments are, and then aiming towards that as your standard for, perfection. That's what the guiding light is. So that's why it's really important to have your constitution, to work in developing that, because that is the thing that you can look at, right? You can print it out, stick it on your wall, look at it every day as a reminder of, this is what keeps me going. This is what acts as my lighthouse, shining the beacon so that I know exactly where to go and how to deal with any situation that rises in my life, including women. Like, at that point, once you start operating from that seat, everything else becomes easy. There are no problems. Women are a non-issue. And then you work on a mouthpiece. Forget about it. Forget about it. Work on your mouthpiece. Now you're able to inspire feelings, pictures into her mind, right? Because now you're a master of your own mind. Once you're a master of your own mind, you can create films in your own head. You can create anything you want and be able to implement most of it, unless it's like, totally fantastical. But for the most part, it's going to be stuff that you can actually implement. And you just reverse engineer, right? So, like, I'm always like, well, not always, but I'm often thinking about fantasies. Okay. Like, fantasies, scenes to enact with my woman. Okay. And so I'll have this idea, like, usually like the end culmination. And then I'll reverse engineer of, like, okay, how am I actually going to do this in real time? I'll think about the actions, the clothing, the dialogue, and everything in between of how it's going to go. And then I'll start planning on, like, where I can place this in time in my real life. Like, okay, will this work on, a Thursday evening? Right. And I try to position things so that I can actually have the time in order to do these things. And then it's like, when you think in this way, in this creative way, in this planning sort of way, when you do interact with a woman, and I'm not saying that you have to have like a girlfriend in order to do these things. It doesn't have to be fantasies, it can be any sort of interaction. then when these situations happen, it's like you've already been there before in some way, right? It might not play out exactly as you thought, but it's going to be something close. And so your mind has already been geared for it. And this has been proven in sports for years. For years they've been studying this the power of visualization. And so they'll have like they'll I remember reading about this study where they had two groups of basketball players doing free throws, and one group was the constant where they didn't do any visualization, and the other group, the variable group, they did visualization for like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes before the free throw competition. And the ones who did the visualization, their free throw count was far above those that did not do the visualization. And all they did was just sit there with their eyes closed and just imagine themselves sinking shot after shot. Boom, boom, boom. Nothing but cash. And so when they got out there, their brain was like, I've already done this. Or the brain doesn't know any different. The brain doesn't know any different between the fantasy and the reality. It's just perceiving inputs. So it's like, oh, we're just doing this again. And then the body just follows suit. The next thing you know, it's just like boom, 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 boom. Is look it up. It's these studies have been done multiple times with regard to free throws and the power of visualization. So I say that to let you know that you need to take control of your mind. That's where game begins. Game begins with controlling how you think. And from there, you can start conducting, visualizing, and wielding your reality. You can create the things that you want. Some things will take longer to create. Some things will take a shorter time to create, but you can create them nonetheless. Let me just check this comment. Big J hit the nail right on the head, because I constantly used to think about, why would someone want a big guy? It's all about looks, etc. But now I'm starting to realize women go for how they feel. Yeah, yeah. Their feelings are the deciding factor. That is the deciding factor for how women move. They make their choices based on how strong their feelings are. Now, check this out. That's why it's so easy for women to dismiss losers. The reason being is that they don't produce any kind of emotional stimulation. And these guys will think that because they're nice, right? These guys will think, because I'm treating her well, that I will be able to influence her, that she'll like me. All right. And that's simply not the case. That's not how women respond. They respond to how something or a situation or a person makes them feel. And that's why romance stories are so popular with women, because they're written in such a way that captivate their emotions. And once you captivate a woman's emotions, you can then transport them wherever you want them to go, simply by talking or reading. So I work with my guys in erotic communication. And that's not, it's going beyond talking dirty, right? I mean, I guess you could say it's talking dirty, but it's not talking dirty. It's talking creatively in an erotic way. And it's about recognizing windows and then creating pathways through those windows by flipping what she says, and then bringing it in a direction that you want it to go. And if you do this in the right kind of way, then you can start wielding her emotional states. And this is very effective for when even she's having a bad day. It's very effective when she's upset, um, or sad, okay, or angry. Once you understand the mechanisms, then at that point you can start wielding things. And I mentioned this before a little bit where there's like this like a buildup, like an emotional buildup, then there's a crescendo, and then it starts going down. Okay. So it's after the crescendo when it starts going down, that's when you can start implementing your influence, where you can start implementing your imagination and your mouthpiece. And so she can have a different experience of herself through you. And then what from that, you start anchoring, right? So you start creating an anchor. Anchors are when you take a certain um, effect and link it towards a certain stimuli. So you can you can start linking feeling good by communicating with you. Like every time I talk to Justin, I feel better about myself. Every time I talk to Justin, I feel horny. Every time I talk to Justin, I feel loved. Every time I talk to Justin, my imagination has grown. All right. And these are anchors so that then when she starts just thinking about you, feelings of lust, feelings of missing you, feelings of arousal, feelings of love, right? Just by now thinking about you, because now you've created these associations, right? Now, of course, I'm not going to get into how to go about doing this, right? Because it's technical and, that's what people pay me for. But, um, it's very effective stuff. And how it links to, say, nice guy behavior and thinking about what other people are thinking, worrying about what other people are thinking, and having negative self speak, all of that crud gets in the way of being able to direct in this way. So as long as you are treating yourself like shit mentally, you cannot have influence over a woman because you have yet to have influence over yourself. It's really that simple. So you have to stop the bullshit in order to move along in a direction that you'd rather go. Oh, that's great, Big J. You said you started writing erotic poetry last semester to help with your mouthpiece. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, think about it. Like a guy who wants to be a rapper. Okay, wants to be a freestyle rapper, not just a guy who records, but he can like spit in a cipher. I remember like being like I was in college with my friend Gene, and he wanted to develop this skill. Right, he wanted to be able to just enter cipher and just start rapping, like freestyling. So he was poring over lyrics. He was poring over rhyming dictionaries. Like he was constantly just filling his mental library with rhyming words, rhyming scenarios, and doing research with like on other rappers and how they kind of constructed their rhymes. All right. And he was just building, 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 building. And it took him a few months, but after a while, he stopped having pauses. He stopped having stumbling blocks. And now, when he was in ciphers, he was just able to rip. And it was because he had built up this library that, you know, there's no organization. It's the mind. You know what I'm saying? Things are jumbled in there, but they were just able to come out. They were able to come out and he would get into like a flow state, right? The same thing can happen with your mouthpiece. Okay. You have to start building the library. And that's with what I was talking about with like my own situation with like scenarios and things like that, where I'm like a director, like I'm a film director, and I'm figuring out all the little details, right down to the dialogue and the attire. Okay. What's the sounds going to be like? What does she look like? How do I think she's going to behave? The facial expressions, the her dialogue. Like I'm thinking about all this stuff, right? It's in the same vein. So developing your mouthpiece, absolutely, it helps to have some practice in erotic writing. Okay. There's I actually have my guys go through this, after a certain point in time, and they have to do a lot of research, and I give them resources and stuff. And then they have to start writing their own erotic short stories. And they don't have to be crazy long. They can be like a page or something like that. But the idea is to start getting their imaginations going in the right direction, allowing themselves the freedom to think erotically, because even if you think that you've got um freedom, a lot of guys don't. A lot of guys really don't. They're either sequestered towards just the things that they've experienced, which is usually not a whole lot, or their imagination is sequestered to porn, and that's not really well done either, right? Because in porn, it's just a highlights almost. It's like a highlight reel where they just kind of squash everything in into just like a few minutes. And like if you like look on porn sites, it's like they're not very long, right? Even the ones with like a so-called story, which are terrible. They're not well thought out at all. There's no real tension or real dynamic in there. Okay. So I really like would urge you to not study porn or use that or allow that to have any sort of influence on how you write. Okay. Or what you write. Now, if you're watching porn, you're like, oh, that's like a cool string of like positions that I'd like to incorporate. That's one thing. Okay. But don't use that as, say, your architecture for writing a story. Okay. Understand that the stories, when you're communicating with yourself and when you're writing, they need to be drawn out. Take your time, stretch out the scene, really stretch it out, slow it down, use a lot of adjectives, really describe it. So when the reader is reading this, okay, they get a feel of all of their senses being engaged. So that when you're say like describing it, you say like you put your like she put her hand on the table. Like what table? What's it made out of? How does it feel? Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it metal or is it wood? Is the wood bare or does it have a veneer on it? Like all these things can be used. See, like even when I was describing that, your imagination shifted, right? Because it goes to that old thing. Like if someone tells you not to think of a pink elephant, you automatically start thinking of a pink elephant. And it's because our minds are geared for description. It's how we relate to the world. So the more detail you offer, the better chance you have of transporting them into that reality. So, when you're writing, and I urge all of you to write, to take time, like at least once a week, have a notebook where you write erotic short stories. In describing things in detail, you stretch things out. Okay. And the reason why this is so important is because women love anticipation. Anticipation is one of the greatest erotic powers that you can have over a woman. And they will even create this with themselves. Like they will cause their own experience to like they'll build the anticipation within themselves and they'll drag it out, right? Because it's like they're like mentally edging themselves. I don't know if you guys know about edging, but like edging is a sexual technique where you bring someone close to orgasm and then you back off. But not so much that they're, like the arousal, the blood pressure drops. It's like you back off just enough, right? And then you go right back up to the edge of the cliff of orgasm and then you back off. And you could do this all day. All right. Until the point where the person's literally crying and begging for release. The same thing can happen with the mind. You can edge someone's mind as long as you have presented something of desire. So once they have something of desire, that's when you can start edging that desire. Allow them to become, get closer to it, and then you pull it back. You slow things down. All right. That's why it's more important for a woman to want to fuck you more than you want to fuck her, because she loves the anticipation. She loves the tease. She loves the carrot being dangled in front of her. And guess what? You can't do this if, A, you're too worried about what she's thinking. B, you've got shit about yourself running through your mind. And C, you're totally overridden with your impulses to get sex. Right? So how if you want the carrot, it's like on the end of your own stick, okay? You're just going to turn it around and eat the damn carrot. And then she's left with nothing. All right? It's much better to enjoy being in the position of holding the stick and not be so overwhelmed and succumb to your quick and easy desire to fuck. All right. And y- like I remember like one of the I'll save that for another time. But it's really important that you control this impulse, right? I've mentioned the conductor, right? Having a conductor mindset. The conductor can't conduct if he is impulsively driven to listening and immersing himself in the music. He can't do it. A chef cannot be a chef if they're eating all the fucking food. Even though they would love to, they make this plate the dish and while they're cooking it and putting all these things together. Sure, they'll taste it just to make sure everything's going in the right direction, but they're not going to gorge themselves because that's going to slow things down. It's going to stop everything in its tracks. That dish is not going to get made. Okay. That idea that maybe they're working on some new creation, it's not going to happen because they're sitting there eating the ingredients before they can actually come together, do their thing, and then make its way onto a plate. The same thing is with your sex drive. It's great that you want to have sex, but if like that's the thing pushing you, you're really not going to be able to get any kind of levels beyond that. This goes back to the bad boy referencing from before. The bad boy has this. The bad boy just wants to fuck. And that's it. Now, if you want to start snacking on the ingredients before you can create a dish, that's fine, right? If that's how you roll, it works for you, great. Okay? But that's not gonna influence anyone. Because you've eaten everything before it's presented on a plate, they have nothing to taste, they're not like, "Ooh, wow, I have to have this again." None of that shit. Okay? It's just surface level, skipping across the surface of the water. And I don't judge guys for what they want to do with their lives. I'm just saying that it falls short. It falls short of an immersive experience on her part, not yours. It falls short of immersive experience on her part. And you know what Big J had mentioned, it's all about how they feel when you are able to conduct. That's when she can deeply feel. That's when because that's what they're after. That's really what they're after. They're after the feeling. They want to feel good. They want to feel horny. They want to feel romantic. They want to feel dirty. They want to feel excited. They also want to feel sad. They also want to miss. Okay. They want to feel everything. And some of those things can be found in the nice guy. Okay. Because they want to feel safe. They want to feel calm. Okay. And some of those things can be found in the bad boy. They want to feel like the ground underneath them is unsettled sometimes, like they don't know what's going to happen next. They want to feel pissed off. They want to feel annoyed. They want to feel something such that they can bitch to their friends about it. They want to feel excited, right? But both of those fall short They're lacking. Okay. Now the bad boy gets more attention because it's more exciting, but it's not fulfilling. Because if it was, women would be chasing after only bad boys. But once they've experienced that taste a few times, then they're like, "Ugh, I'm not into it. I understands that it's lacking. It doesn't give me the nourishment that I need." Now you can figure out what her needs actually are. You can figure out what her needs are when you've become the conductor, when you have allowed your impulses for fucking to go on the back burner, not off the stove, but just on the back burner. You've taken control of those fucking thoughts in your head, replace them with better thoughts, start using your creative mind. So that now you have a good mouthpiece, which then directs her emotional experience. And this makes all the difference in the world, all the difference, because now feelings are coming out from simply just being around you and just having communication with you. Now involve your body, forget about it. Forget about it. The drug has already been set, and now you involve your body, and you've got a good fuck game going on. Now it's a done deal. It's an absolute done deal. Now you combine that with your program, and she's following it and getting rewards for following. You're guiding her towards betterment of herself, weeding out poor behavior, encouraging positive behavior. You see how this works together in so much more powerful fashion than some player who's having a bunch of one night stands every month with no callbacks or just like very little callbacks. Do you see how different that is? Right? The player and the nice guy, they're lacking. They're two faces of the same coin. And I'd argue that that coin is actually from a place of insecurity. Okay? Because a lot of times bad boys know how to operate in such a way that they get the validation that they seek from women. They get the attention, they get the energy, right? Because they present a stimuli in a certain way that causes the woman to pull at them, right? To try to get more of their time and more of their dick. All right. But from a position of a man who lives by a constitution, who's the conductor, who knows himself, he doesn't have these shit thoughts in his brain. He has better than shit thoughts in his brain. He doesn't need her. He doesn't need the woman for anything. Nothing. Nothing at all, unless you want to have a family and then you need her for procreation. Otherwise, the reason why she's there is because she's willingly and joyfully agreed to be on your program. And that's it. That's it. Now, the bad boy, the nice guy, in my hypothesis is that they come from the same place of insecurity. Okay. So long, long time ago, in their say their upbringing, young man, whatever, they've experienced something that was somewhat traumatic. And what that did is it caused them to seek for validation from women in one or the other fashion. And depending on, probably many psychological variables and environmental variables, it caused some guys to go towards being really nice and being really accommodating, not wanting to rock the boat, seeking that validation from a very covert sort of way. All right. And that passes off as very socially acceptable. Now you go back to that same split. Some guys will have a certain psychological makeup with a certain type of trauma in certain environmental that cause them to splinter off into the other way, where they then seek validation from women, but in a completely dismissive sort of way. That's very manipulative. That causes them to you know drool at the mouth for your attention, but it's all just to get that attention because there's that need. But men, on the other hand, there's no need. A mountain doesn't need shit. Doesn't need it. Damn, a mountain doesn't even need sunlight. Doesn't need air. It doesn't need anything. It's just a mountain. And this is the seat of being a man. This is the mindset. And it's not bitter. Okay. Because the nice guy, he can shift it to being bitter and not need a woman. Okay. But it's out of hatred. Okay. Being a man, you absolutely can love women. It just doesn't affect you. It's like how the sun, if you could like personify the sun, it's like how the sun loves the trees and the flowers and the animals and all that shit, right? It just shines. Like it's not a big deal. It's like, yeah, this is just what I do. But there's no attachment. There's not like the sun's gonna be fucking sad if a flower doesn't open up that day. Right? It's the same sort of thing. When you're a man and you're grounded, you don't have that need for anything from her. You're not attached in any sort of way. It's so much easier to love because you're not seeking anything from her means that nothing can be taken away. It's only when a guy is needy and he needs something from her that when he gives something to her, such as his love, it then becomes a liability. He now feels like he's gone out on a limb and he has to protect that. And now he's like watching. He's like watching over his shoulder, okay, to make sure that she doesn't fuck that up because he's got so many attachments to that. But now he's fucking crazy. All right. Thinking about, who's on her phone, who she's talking to at work, oh my gosh, did she like that picture on Instagram? Like all kinds of fucked up shit because of his attachments, because he needs that from her. He needs to have her make him feel safe. Right? Men don't need women to feel safe. I create safety for her. She comes to me to feel safe because I'm grounded. I'm solid. Don't need her. And I know for like a lot of guys, it's uncomfortable to come to that reality without bitterness, right? Just a very calm sense of I don't need her. I don't need women. Just like the sun doesn't need the flowers. If all flowers went away, the sun would still be the sun doing sun things. And that is the way of man. You're the same whether she's here, whether she's not, whether she's doing this or doing that, whether she says this or she says that. It's the fucking same. But it's like when you have these attachments and expectations and covert contracts, if I do this, then I should get that. Okay. That's when you're fucked, right? Because now, because of the attachments, right? Imagine like a fishing hook with a line. Wherever the thing is that you've hooked now then pulls you in that direction. So if she goes off to do this thing that you don't like, that makes you feel bad, all right, now you're being tugged in that direction. Oh my gosh, she wants to go on a girls' trip. You get tugged. And then maybe that gets counteracted with, I'm going to be tough and tell her she's not allowed to go anywhere or do anything because I'm the fucking man. You're just going to be chained to a pipe in the basement. I'll push food under the door for you and sometimes fuck you. That's that's what a lot of you guys want to do, right? Because you're scared. And you're scared because you need her to feel better about yourself because of all the shit that's in your head. Because of all the negative self-speak, right? Just causing like dent after dent after dent. It's now like breaking through and creating a fucking hole. You know, it's like if you have like a piece of like sheet metal and you keep hitting it with a hammer, the dent gets bigger and bigger and bigger until the point where the hammer rips through the sheet metal. Okay. This is what you guys do with your own head, with how you talk to yourselves. Now you need her to kind of be like putty to fill in that shit that you did to yourself. Now, if she does anything to like say like move off of position, now that's really going to hurt. And instead of understanding that it has everything to do with you, you'll blame her. No, you're not going because you're going to suck some guy's dick while you're out there. Because I know what happens on girls' trips. Yeah, because you've been a fucking woman before. Because you've actually been out on girls' trips before. No, you know what you have? You have other YouTubers who are terrible with women telling you what women do when they go on vacation. That's what you have. Men don't give a fuck. I don't care. My girl goes on trips with her friends. They're going to Hawaii in a little while. Don't care. I mean, I care that like she has a good time. I care that she's safe or whatever, you know, plane doesn't go down or, you know, she gets caught in another fire. That was terrible that what happened out there. But I'm not worried about her talking to other guys. I'm not the jealous type. I'm not possessive. And the funny part is, more irony, when you're not jealous, when you're not possessive, they want to be closer to you. They don't want to fuck with what you've got going on. It's really wild. But you can't pretend, right? Because they will every so often put out little feelers to see if you're pretending or not. And they'll be able to pick up on your emotional reaction. And so despite like what you saying, you're like, oh yeah, I don't care, like whatever. If there's like you can't control it, but you'll have a bit of emotional seeping out of your true feelings on the matter. And she'll pick up on it without a doubt. She will pick up on the tiniest drop of emotional giving a shit about what she's doing or who she talked to or whatever the fuck. Like you actually have to let go and not be jealous, not be possessive, and not be what do they call it to kind of hide it? Oh, territorial. Right? Guys will be like, I'm not the jealous type, I'm just territorial. The fuck you are. They're the same fucking thing. It's both you, it's the same thing. It's just two different names for you wanting to control your woman out of fear. But men are fearless, especially when it fucking comes to a woman. What the fuck can a woman do to make me scared? What? The only way is if you have no control of your mind, you've attached your emotions to her in order to feel better about yourself because you need that shit, because you talk like shit to yourself, you don't like who you are, you don't like what you are, and therefore anything she does or says can easily upset you, easily just pull the rug out from underneath your feet and you're stumbling or you're flat on your face. Now, once she gets a taste for this, right, just the smallest little taste that this is what you're like, you might as well just, well, hopefully you'll pick up on it and just leave and just start again. Because, like with somebody else, because once she realizes that, she will not have respect for you. She will know that you're weak and that she can easily manipulate you. Like one of the greatest things that women love about men, not males, but men, is that they cannot play men. Women love men that they cannot play. They love them because with the boxes, remember I was talking about like how she puts guys into boxes. She knows all the different ways she can easily play all those dudes. And that's why they're in boxes, because she has them figured out. She knows if she presses that button, he'll jump. If she presses that button on that guy, he'll step left. Presses that button on that guy, he'll step right. And that's what brings down respect and desire in a woman, when she knows that she can push your buttons. Now I, I might I might argue that women have an impulse to push buttons. Like I think they might like it. Okay, because I've mentioned before, I'm in a DS situation, and within the DS situation, I've and it's very common. It's not just for me, but we set up opportunities to press buttons. So there are certain things that are like um yellow light behaviors that they can kind of fuck with, right? Yellow light rules. Let me just say that. There's yellow light rules that are free to fuck with from time to time. And when they do, it's a signal to them that they want want to feel your masculine force, either through your voice or through your body, through a scenario or whatever. They just want to feel that like rough of a man, right? Of being put in their place. Okay. Now my girl, she's a very good girl, right? So she kind of has to think of ways to get under my skin. Now, none of it gets under my skin, but there are certain key things that I know that I can pretend to let get under my skin, because she's seeking a certain something. And if I'm feeling in the mood, then I will give her that certain something. And some could argue that's her leading, but it's with my own consent. And it's okay, right? Like I don't mind, because it's just a little bit of gameplay and allows me to express myself in creative ways, get that director going on in the mind. How am I going to make her pay for that? All right. What's the dialogue going to be? Is she going to write lines? Is she going to sit in the corner? Is she going to get a spanking? Right? Whatever it is. Okay. Um, but the point is that, I think women naturally have an impulse to poke. And when you're the type that doesn't get moved, I think they kind of enjoy poking, right? Until they find the spot, like, oh shit, that really actually pissed him off, right? But if nothing pisses you off, you then have to sort of like give opportunities to pretend like you're pissed off. And just so she can feel the results of poking the bear. All right. But that's a whole other thing. Um Big J here with another comment. I'm starting to understand it some more. I just got to find someone or some people to read them. So I've been speaking to about 8 women a day and not approaching. Um, yeah, I mean it's pretty easy. Like if you've got a dialogue going on with a young woman, um, you can just say, hey, like if she's like, hey, what have you been up to today? You say, well, I've been doing some writing. Um, and then you can maybe like use some reverse psychology and say, like, I don't think you'd be interested in reading it. And then that usually causes people to want to read it, right? Sort of in the same vein of like, don't think of a pink elephant, and it makes them think of a pink elephant. in the same way you say don't want to read this, it makes them want to read it, right? You don't want to try this ice cream, it's awful. Oh, but you're eating it, right? And then it makes them want to taste it. It's the same sort of shit, right? And then you present just a bit of it, right? Not the whole thing, right? Remember, women love anticipation. So you present just enough up to a point of climax within the story. I don't mean like actual like a coming scene, but like a where there's like a peak tension, and then you stop. And then she's like, "Well, where's the rest?" And you say, "Well, if you're a good girl, I will give you the rest of the story." And then usually, I mean, at least in my experience, they say, "Well, how do I do that? How do I be a good girl?" Mm. And that's when you can lead how you see, like, so you've created the window, she stepped through, and then you present the pathway to where you wanted to go. So she's like, how do I be a good girl? Well, and then at that point, you tell her, but you have to know what you want. And you can't be afraid of saying what you want, right? But again, draw it out. Don't just jump to don't just jump to the end or jump to the excitement just like in porn. You know what I'm saying? So she's like, "Well, what do you want?" Like, "Oh, well, I want you to come over here and suck my dick, and then I'll give you the rest of the story." It's like that doesn't work. Okay. So know what you want beyond porn. Okay. And then that's how you can lead the situation. Um, but yeah, remember, it's just always drawing out, creating anticipation, build, be descriptive. Um, And so even in your description, like when she says, "How do I be a good girl so I can get the rest of the story?" Don't just be a one word person. Okay. You're a writer. You can express more than that. Paint an image in her mind so that she can be transported to it because she already gets a sense that you can write. Now you're talking to her directly, right? Not her just listening to this like third party story, which she already, if it's good, she'll be transporting herself into. That's what women do. Like when they're reading like those erotic stories, they're actually putting themselves in that scenario. Like when women watch a movie, they put themselves in the movie. That's just how their minds work. All right. Like if you're ever like talking about a certain something and the woman says, "Well, okay." Like if you're like say something about I don't know, you watch this documentary about like female behavior or whatever, and then her response to you describing part of that was, "See, well, I don't do that. Well, I like to," right? They always like bring it in like about themselves. So when you're writing, they will habitually put themselves in that scenario, and so just understand that. So when she first listens to the first part of that story, she'll have already put herself into it if it's well written and she, it has that effect on her. Then when she says, "Well, how can I be the good girl to hear the other part?" That's when you you take that same sort of like storytelling ability, but now you're talking to her. You're purposely putting her now in a story, right? But something that's realistic. All right. So just think about that. Put your imagination cap on, and sort of flesh that out about where you want that to go. This would even be effective if it's not happening with you right now. Like, let's say a guy's listening to me right now. He's not talking to any women. All right. Imagine that this scenario has happened. And then she says, "Well, how do I be a good girl for you?" And then you start creating that talking to her, and you start painting a little picture in her mind about how she can do this. You should absolutely do this on your own. Like even if you don't have, because like if you're putting in effort, there will be a woman in front of you where you're having this sort of communication with, either in person or online. And if you've done this already 20 times, think about how much easier it's going to be to communicate with her. All right. Um, yeah, V, thank you for the comments as well. Masculinity in its purest form, it's love with or without outside influences. Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. It's And it's not love in any kind of romantic sense. It's not like what we've been taught. It's not what how it's been portrayed. Um, maybe in some form of poetry, excuse me, maybe in some form of poetry, here and there or whatever, but honestly, like if you could say combine the essence of the sun and the mentality of the mountain, that's what love is like. Because it's not trying to get anything back, right? It's fully seated where it is. The sun's not going anywhere. It's stationary, right? It's a nuclear reaction that seemingly has no beginning and end, right? It's a seamless circle. So it doesn't need something to start it, and it's not going to have an influence from the outside making it stop. It just is. That's what loving is like from the position of a man, because you're not trying to get anything, because you don't need anything. That's the power of being a man. Being part of it is that you're free to love. You're free to love because it just flows. Like there's no big deal about it. It's not a big deal, right? But it is a big deal when you have been conditioned to need something back, like it's some sort of commodity to trade, right? Which greatly lessens its real potency. Now, you might think, well, if I just give love freely, then I'm going to be taken advantage of. That still comes from a place of thinking of it as a commodity. If I give this and they take it and don't give anything back, then I'm going to be fucked. Right. So, again, a lot of how you experience your own reality has a lot to do with your beliefs and habitual thinking. So, you got to keep that in mind. Like what you believe is likely not to be true, because many of the beliefs are things that you've been adopted or conditioned with over time. Like you didn't come up with it. It's not your reality. It's something borrowed or something ingrained. All right. So it's important, like when you come up with, say, you say something online or you say something verbally, try to catch yourself. Okay. Because again, I said the beginnings of game starts with becoming aware of your thinking patterns. And if you come up with something, you say something online and you are expressing a belief. Let's say you're watching a video, let's say it's live, and you type in something, yeah, but women, blah, 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 blah. Okay. That's a belief. Okay. That statement comes from a belief. And you have to stop and say, but is this really true? Do I know this to be true? Not do I know this to be true because that guy over there with the, 500,000 followers said it's true, but is it really true? Okay. There's a logical fallacy called the argument from authority. Right now, it works. The argument from authority actually works if all parties involved can verify and agree that the information is true. But the problem is, like I mentioned before, a lot of these guys talking about what happens with women are terrible with women. They've had maybe like a couple of experiences here and there. They've never done the shit that I'm talking about. None of those guys have had women building fucking shrines in their closet for you or well, for them. None of them. I would be willing to bet my left nut that none of those guys who are spouting and believe these beliefs about how women actually are have that kind of experience. Shit, they don't even have the player experience to bounce through. more likely than not, what they have is nice guy shit, because most guys come from, say, like the island of nice guys. Okay. They had a few experiences, they had their ass burned, and then they went information seeking. And through that, they came to certain truisms based on their reality. So when you've got a certain belief structure through patterned thinking and limited experience, the information that you're reading will then support those things. The things that don't support it get quickly ignored because because all right, the reason why they need to hold on to a certain belief is because there's emotions attached to it. Right? That's why they say when you're in a bar, don't talk about politics or religion, because both of those things are having to do with belief structures, and beliefs, for the most part, are tied with your emotions. So when you challenge someone's belief, it makes them feel a certain way. That's why real coaching is so difficult for people. That's why myself, colleagues of mine, their channels aren't blowing the fuck up. No, because to deal with actual life as it is requires you to challenge and break down your beliefs that have attachments to certain emotions. And that's a painful process to get through. It really is. So it's safer to just stick with your own in herds and be around others that have similar beliefs so that you can feel safe, so that you can feel comfortable in numbers. And then whatever guy, a YouTube content creator dude says is true, which may not be true because he too is coming from a place of limited experience, from attached emotions, based off of a couple of instances and a bunch of research that already goes with what he already believes. I forget what that's called, but it's got a certain phrase. But they already believe these things and then just absorb more of the information that supports their belief because it's attached to their feelings and they don't want their feelings challenged, right? Because that's uncomfortable, right? So they all band together, right? And just grow and grow and grow off of seats of, unattended to emotions, beliefs that aren't real, right? When they say female nature does this, this, and this, right then and there, you know that they don't have a full experience of women. They don't know what it's like to have a woman joyfully want to serve you. And I don't mean fucking making you breakfast, but it's something that comes out from inside them. Yes, that's it, V. Confirmation bias. Thank you. So listen to these guys. If they're only speaking on these negative things, they're only pulling from their own limited experience, which means you shouldn't be listening to them, or they're just regurgitating some shit they heard from somebody who's just like them. And just because this builds and then they can make a lot of money off of it and thus change their image, making them seem more important, thus legitimizing the bullshit that they're saying, which just is still bullshit. It's just taking like a dried turd. You ever see, like, you're walking down the street and you see like a pile of dog shit that's been sitting there for like a week, and all the moisture is evaporated from it because it's been sitting in the sun. It just becomes this hard, like crusty mass. So you just take that and put like some gold spray paint on it, right? And now it's not really like a shitty shit. It's like gold, and you're like, oh, gold, right? Maybe you put like some real gold dust stuck in the paint, so now it like actually has like some monetary value. That's like what these guys are doing with themselves. But if you strip all that away and really look at them, you're dealing with somebody who, I don't really like calling people losers, but you're dealing with somebody who is limited. They're limited in scope. They're limited in experience. They're limited in their beliefs. They're limited in their experiences. So just understand that presentation can change a lot of things. I know a couple of guys, I'm not, all about mentioning a lot of names, but I know a couple of guys who have gained a great following and have done fantastic coaching and have relayed some very, very heavy game just through a phone. And they're sitting there in a little fucking like tank top or t-shirt, like nothing crazy, no lights, no fancy cameras, you know, no jewelry, no fancy lighting, no presentation whatsoever. All right. And these guys are doing well, right? Because what they're saying is the truth. It's real truth. Okay. And if you have, I mean, game is endless, it's infinite. But if you have a good taste, if you have a taste for what it feels like, what it sounds like, when someone starts spitting real game, you know it. Like you can feel it. You understand it because you too have some semblance of understanding what it's about. And then when you hear other guys talking, it becomes grossly aware that they don't know what they're talking about. So just a little tip, if they're only talking about I guess the what you might call the bad sides of women, because there really is a bad side or a good side to women. There's just women. Okay. But if you're only talking of their negative experiences, and they're always like grilling women, like either on the street, I've seen that bullshit, or in a studio with like an interview panel or whatever. And there's nothing constructive there. There's nothing, um, they're not even like engaging the women themselves. Like they are, but only on the surface. Right? Shout out to Steve. They're talking at the women. Okay. Like, and quite aggressively sometimes, or they're questioning like a litigator would, right? Like they've like the woman's on the stand and she's just walking down the street and he's got a camera and mic. He's like, "Hey, you want to answer some questions?" He's like starts grilling her with like gotcha questions, right? It's like that guy has no idea what it's like to be worshipped. No fucking clue. Therefore, you should not listen to it. You should just pass it by. You're on YouTube, you see something like that. Yeah, it might be engaging, it might be fun, it might be entertaining, but it's passive consumption. Your mind will still passively absorb every single word. You don't want that shit in your head. Like I said, game begins with awareness of your mind. Once you become aware of it, you then become very conscious of what you allow into it. Very conscious because it's passive. Okay. Like I mentioned in another video, you can't go through life with your eyes closed and your ears shut. Right. It'd be very difficult to live that way. So these are passive information gatherers. They're always pulling information. So you have to do very well at monitoring what comes in. No fucking red pill shit. I don't care how fucking engaging the panel is. I don't care how funny the dude might be. I don't care how hot the chicks are. I don't care about any of that stuff. And you shouldn't either. You should be monitoring what goes on, what goes into your brain, because these things, because they're passive, it will have an effect on your mind. And what's worse is that it's an effect that you're not going to be conscious of. Like imagine if you spent 3 months listening to music and the lyrics were nothing but negative shit. I mean, this is the only music you listen to. Your headphones were on the majority of the day, listening to music about you know, I don't know, like raping and pillaging, right? This over time will start affecting the way you think. It'll start affecting things on an unconscious level. It'll start affecting things without a doubt because it's a passive receptor. Your brain's always absorbing. So you have to be mindful. Mindfulness of what comes in. Game begins with awareness of your mind, of what comes in and what's already there and what's happening there. All right. I'm going to chill out here. It's top of the hour. I appreciate everyone who was here on time to listen to the show. And I appreciate anyone who has watched this on the replay. If anyone has any questions about dating, relationships, marriage, the game, or the BDSM lifestyle, you can email me at thedominanceacademy@gmail.com. That's thedominanceacademy@gmail.com. And we can set up a call. The call is always free for the first one. We can chat for about an hour and we can talk about anything you like. All right. Okay. Until next time. And we'll talk to you then.